What's up, guys? M. Jones back in the house again for another Blu-Ray special. Today I have to introduce you to my good buddy Stegs right here. I got a huge affinity for movies. Both of us love movies, so today we want to have a special Blu-ray presentation for you about our top 10 favorite movies that we actually currently have on Blu-ray. What we're going to do is go over collectively our top 10 lists. I'm going to go over my 10, and he's going to go over his 10, and we're going to alternate as we go. Some of the movies he has I would love to have in my list, but hey, he found them first, and some of the movies I'm sure he would like to put in his list too. But we're going to go over what we love starting at 10, going down the whole way to 1. Alright, are you ready? Stegs, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, my number 10, early 90s, Mr. Joe Pesci, Mr. Tomei, Ralph Macchio, My Cousin Vinny. Love this movie. Always thought it was so funny. You know, Marissa Tomei won Best Supporting Actress, which is shocking for being a comedy genre. Definitely in the Oscars. Love this movie. Stags, what's your number 10?
It was a hard decision to put these in order, but I thought it through very carefully. And my number 10 has to be Tommy Boy. I've always loved Chris Farley growing up because he just kind of reminds me of myself. You know, we're both big guys, and
Love
just
him.
this movie is just my kind of humor. You know, that I find hysterical. It's one of those road trip movies that you could just watch over and over again.
Yeah.
You know, it's very quotable and just a lovable movie. You know? I'm Tommy and he's Richard.
Alright, number 9. I used to watch this movie with one of my best buddies growing up. Every time we had a sleepover, I always had to watch this movie. I don't eat just a shit ton of candy the whole time. This movie inspired me to eat more than enough candy. But Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and not Charlie in the Chocolate Factory movie sucked, but this movie, phenomenal. I think late 70s, early 80s. Really love this movie. I think it's, Gene Wilder's probably one of his best movies. I love that he was like pretending like he couldn't walk when they all went to see him. Then he all of a sudden did like a somersault and started dancing all over the place. I thought that was really cool. Oompa Loompas freaked me out as a kid. As I got older, I'm good now, but I always thought it was such a good movie, just well directed. Actually, the part that I hate in this movie the most is with Charlie's mom, and she's singing "Cheer Up, Charlie." I hate that. It's so awkward. It's just like she's just standing there talking to Charlie, and then he walks away, and she just starts singing. It's like I've never done it ever. Stags, number 9.
My number 9, I have to go with Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, classic.
Jones, I know you love this movie
So
too.
classic.
It is such a classic. Like this
So
movie
good.
is what I would call comedy gold.
1994.
1994, Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels, directed by the Farrelly brothers.
So funny.
Yep, it's another one of those road trip movies too. You know, it's a road trip. Every time I watch it, right halfway through Connecticut, you're already annoying me.
Sorry. You're like, dude, are we buddy?
Yeah.
Classic.
I do love this movie though. I'll be honest, I don't like this version, the Blu-ray version, because
Awful.
it's the unrated version and
Awful.
there's alternate music, like alternate scenes, and like it's not what I'm used to watching.
Yeah. Awful.
So, if anything, I would just buy the Blu-ray case and then put the DVD in.
yeah.
You know, that's what I would do.
The Blu-ray sucks.
Just so I could, feel safe with this.
Yeah, it was so terrible.
But this is my number 9,
Yeah.
Dumb and Dumber.
Number 8. We're at the Ocho. This was a tough call. I almost didn't put this in my top 10, but I was like, I really love this movie. But, John Goodwin, hands down the best character in this movie. But The Big Lebowski. And this is, I believe, the Digibook, right?
Yes.
Digibook, yeah. Well, I got this at Best Buy a couple years ago, and I just saw the case. It had so much information. I mean, there's like a whole booklet and stuff like that, and there's pictures. And I just had to get it. I just always loved this movie. And John Goodman's character, Walter, is just, he's the best. If there was an Oscar for just best comedic actor, he would have won for that year. This movie's so funny. And I love that he drinks White Russians. I love White Russians, The Big Lebowski. And just really love this movie. Had to put it in the top 10 somehow. Stags, your number 8?
My number 8, and it's probably should be in your top 10 too, because this is a movie I grew up watching. Stars Tom Hanks. I think he's one of the best actors of our time.
Hands down.
I'm pretty sure. And it's Forrest Gump.
Oh.
I've watched this movie many times, since I was a little kid.
I was running.
And I didn't really understand it a lot when I was a kid because I wasn't around during those times of what they depict in the movie.
Like Nixon,
Oh, yeah.
Vietnam.
But I always remember, one thing I always remember about this, every time I watched it with my dad would cry. And I never understood why he would cry, but then I realized, my dad grew up in these times and he relates to it a lot. But, I think it's, phenomenal acting. I think the director, Robert Zemeckis, is brilliant. And this movie is it's such a heartwarming movie. It's a feel-good movie, too. So that's my number 8.
I agree.
More numbers.
Alright, number 7. I'm sure Stegs would love to have this in his list, but he did not choose it, thank goodness, because I found it second. Number 7, The Sandlot. Absolutely love this movie. I remember my mom took me to see this in like 1993. I was like 8 years old. And I remember we saw it in this little, like, one of those real small, like, mall movies, theaters, which are just awful. Popcorn's disgusting. But this movie I just loved. I loved, Scotty Smalls, played by Tom Geary, who's not that far from here where we're from. He's lived in, like, Jersey. He was in a few movies, like Lassie, which was awful. But he's not even in theater. He's not even in movies anymore, I don't think. I know he's in Mystic River. But this movie's so good. James Earl Jones, what a great cameo, I guess, if you want to consider it that. Dennis Leary was great in it. I just loved how the kid, got bullied a little bit, I guess, and he just didn't really was accepted by the team in the very beginning. And then they started, stop bullying, stop hazing, and they accepted him because, he just caught a baseball and everything like that. I loved it because he was like so new and he really had no idea like what to do. To be a kid, and his mom's like, just go scrape your knees. Like, that was such a great metaphor for this movie. And really loved this movie. I've seen this so many times. And I know they recently released, like, a new, like, 20th anniversary. I didn't buy it because, you know why? I saw some bloggers on here that said it wasn't worth it. If you have the Blu-ray regular one, just keep that. So, I don't want to waste any more money and buy something new. But that's my number 7. Stegs?
My number 7, and this would probably be, Jones, this would be in your top
20.
Definitely. I'm sure.
Loved it.
I saw this in one of your recent Blu-ray updates, and this has always been a favorite of mine as a kid. And every time I watch it, I always laugh, the same. And it's Nutty Professor with Eddie Murphy.
So good.
And he's just such a great actor, like the way he plays the entire Clump family. And just, the comedy that comes out of both those scenes. It is very genius. And I think the movie gives out a good message, too. About, just be yourself.
Yeah.
Just be yourself.
Yeah, because Jada Pinkett found him attractive and he was 500 pounds. It's amazing.
So, yeah, this is my number 7.
Number 7. Number 6. Every Christmas, watch it 3-4 times. Chevy Chase, hysterical. Beverly D'Angelo, hysterical. Christmas Vacation. National Lampoon's probably their best one. In my opinion, it's the best vacation out of all the whole set. Just love this movie. Always makes me want to drink eggnog every time I watch this movie. It's a young Johnny Galecki from Big Bang Theory. A young Juliette Lewis. It's just a great flick. And this was also before Randy Quaid went nuts, basically. And I just love how they bring back all like the same obscure people, but they always change up Rusty and Audrey. It doesn't make any sense. It's always new kids. And, it's never the same kids.
That's a running gag that they always do in those movies, though.
Why is that?
He says it in, I think he says it in Vegas Vacation.
Oh, yeah,
I hardly recognize you guys anymore.
That's right. They did say that.
That's a running gag that they always have.
That's right. But I always think it's funny they have, like, some unknown actors like Eddie's wife. I have no idea who that is, but she's always in the Vacations. I just think that's so neat that they keep that consistent, but they never keep Rusty and Audrey consistent. But love this movie. So good. Just... The house was just, the electric bill had to be humongous of all those lights. Love it. Go ahead, number 6.
Number 6, this is the movie that, started getting me to become a horror movie fan. And I think it's a good one to start with. I saw it on the Sci-Fi Channel, I think when I was in maybe 4th or 5th grade. And, it wasn't the whole movie. I saw it right at the part where, he's coming out of the school with the pumpkin. And let me show you what the movie is. It's John Carpenter's Halloween. This movie is quite possibly, one of the best independent movies of all time. It was made of a budget of like $300,000.
Not a lot of money.
But it grossed so much, and it's just such an original piece.
Yeah.
That it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And ever since I saw it, I always went to the video store and I just had to rent other horror movies that were like it. And this is the movie that this is the reason why I love slasher movies so much. Is because of this movie right here.
Classic. We're halfway through. We're number 5. This one I just loved. It's the first time I think I ever found out what like gay meant and stuff like that. But it was Mrs. Doubtfire, 1994. You know, I just loved Robin Williams with his voices in the very beginning when he says "piss off, Lou," and Sally Field was really funny, and I just really enjoyed how he was so cool as a dad, and he was just a little immature, but he really was a good-hearted person. And I love that his brother and his like life partner were trying to make him into a woman, and it's just so funny. And Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack, just love that. I just thought that was really funny. I had no idea what that meant until my mom explained it to me that night. I was like, oh, okay. And just really thought this was a good movie. And I've never been a big Pierce Brosnan fan, but I kind of liked him in this movie for what he was. Just, you know, there's so many quotes in this movie. You know, one of my favorite parts is with the perverted old bus driver, and how Robin Williams' character, Mrs. Doubtfire, walks, you know, onto it. She's like a huge, like, bosomed woman, very voluptuous and just a big woman. He's just like staring at her and constantly trying to hit on her, even though, you know, he has hairy legs and stuff like that. It's so funny. Just a classic. Number 5. Stegs, your number 5.
My number 5, yet again, Jones, I think this would probably be in your top 10, I'm sure, if you pick this first. And I believe that this is a movie that Halloween inspired, and it's 1996 Wes Craven's Scream.
Oh, classic.
This movie, you know, as soon as I saw it, I was hooked. I was actually very scared. That opening 10 minutes with Drew Barrymore,
awful.
You know, absolutely terrified me as a kid. But no matter how much, I just couldn't look away. No matter how much it scared me, I had to watch it.
Ghostface, yeah.
And you know, once I saw this movie, I was Ghostface for Halloween when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade.
I was when I was like 5th grade.
You know, and it spawned 3 sequels. And I just love this one so much.
Yeah.
It's just one that I could always watch.
And I heard Scream 5 is supposed to be happening, right? Or is that not true?
You know, they said that when Scream 4 was in production, they said that Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson signed on for 3 movies, 4, 5, and 6. But I think with the success of 4, you know, they're not going to make a 5th.
Well, I'm fine with it if they want to. I love them.
But yeah, I was so hyped about Scream 4 to come out. I checked like IMDb every day for updates on Scream 4 because I heard it was supposed to be just like the original.
Oh my God.
So this will always be, you know, my 2nd favorite horror movie or slasher.
So good.
It's brilliant.
You love it. All right, number 4. This one, just a classic. I remember seeing this in high school with like an old high school girlfriend, and just I remember I think I saw this around Christmas time of like maybe like 10th or 11th grade. But Catch Me If You Can. Just I love Leo DiCaprio, and he's definitely one of my top favorite actors. You know, he's so good as Frank Abagnale, you know, the scam artist that really has no credential whatsoever, but he pretty much gets all these credentials in the movie. It's just amazing how he does it. And I just love Tom Hanks as Carl Hanratty, and you know, just how he talks with the Boston accent. It was a little obnoxious, but like it was pretty good. You know, it was pretty accurate, I should say. But just really love this movie. You know, I watch it probably once a year. You know, if it's on TV, I might stick around for like another 20 minutes if I was going to be going somewhere and just, you know, just watch it. It's just, it's so good. You know, Spielberg did a great job as a director in this. But just love this movie. My number 4. Catch Me If You Can. Steggers?
My number 4, I'm going to have to go with 1992's Home Alone 2.
Oh.
This is one of those movies that I've watched, like even with the first one, I've watched over and over again as a kid. And it's so quotable. And it's one of those movies that, like, no matter how many times I watch it and I know what's coming, I will still laugh just as hard or even harder than I did when I was a kid. You know, it's produced by John Hughes and written by John Hughes and directed by Chris Columbus, who also directed Mrs. Doubtfire.
Love it.
And, you know, this will always, you know, remain in my heart as one of my, you know, favorite movies of all time. As a kid, like, it just reminds me of my childhood so much. I will always love this movie.
Always make me want to go to New York
Daniel
City.
Stern and Joe Pesci.
Awesome.
You know, such a great combination.
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry, he's great too.
Oh, awesome. Number 3. This movie, I think everyone has this in their top 10 list. If not, you've either never seen it or you're dead. I'm not really sure, or not alive. But there's such a good movie. You know, there was so many people up for the role of Andy Dufresne, and I forget how Tim Robbins got the role, but there was so many people up for that role. And you know, Shawshank Redemption. It's just such a good movie. You know, Morgan Freeman plays Red. You know, the guy that can get you anything you want in prison. He's the man that knows everything, knows every trick there is. You know, Andy Dufresne, wrongly accused, you know, prison inmate. You know, he befriends Red. You know, in a way that you wouldn't think they'd become friends. You know, and just such a good movie. And just I was terrified of the guy Bob Gunton, who was the warden of the prison, and he just freaked me. He was so scary to me. You know, he just was so like this religious guy who was just ruthless at the same time, and his head guard, you know, who beat the hell out of that real big fat guy. Like I just felt so bad for that guy in that movie. I remember I couldn't even watch that part. You know, and my parents didn't want me to like see anyone kill themselves in this movie. It was just it was just so many parts that just. It's so hard to watch, but it's so good. Like, the movie's just incredible. But just love this movie. You know, Frank Darabont directed, another great director. But you have to see this if you've never seen it. It's amazing. Stegs?
So, my number 3, this also goes along with my number 4. 3 and 4 could be either or, you know, my 3 and 4. But it's Home Alone, 1990. You know, another directed by Chris Columbus.
Classic.
Yeah, written and produced by John Hughes.
Mm-hmm.
And I pretty much can say the same thing about it, just like the second one, because the second one pretty much is an exact copy of this movie, but in New York City. You know, same actors, you know, same kid, Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern. And I think that this movie itself, you know, even though it's like based around Christmas time, you can watch this movie anytime throughout the year.
I always watch at Christmas time, though.
Yeah, you gotta watch at Christmas time, just, you know, for tradition. But you know, I could watch this any time of the year along with the second one and still love it just as much and still laugh just as hard. But this movie right here, I think, is a timeless movie where many generations of people and kids would love to watch this. Okay, and it will always be, you know, just as funny as it was when it was released. It is such a timeless movie, and you know, it's brilliant. And they don't make movies like this anymore.
No.
You don't get movies like this anymore.
Never. I've never seen anything remotely close to it. Because nowadays, there's cell phones, there's all this technology, iPads, you know, Beats by Dr. Dre, Bose, all this stuff. All this stuff that kids are so distracted with. No cell phones in this. No iPads, no Apple, no nothing. Just like, you just play. And you don't see that anymore. Because movies like that could never be made. Because it would be so obscure for it to be called contemporary or modern.
Oh, yeah.
So, just love that movie.
Yep. This movie always reminds me of my childhood.
Number 2, definitely number 1 for action, but just my number 2 all time, Die Hard. Watch it every time it's on TV. I don't care what I'm doing. You know, I just love young Bruce Willis, and I love that Carl Winslow from Family Matters is in this again as a cop. Shocking, and I love the guy that is played by Alan Rickman. You know, he was the bad guy in this, and he was just ruthless. It's just awfully ruthless, and it's just a great flick. It really is a good movie. It was kind of the movie in the 80s that kind of set the tone for movies to come. You know, there's a lot of movies like that where they almost like they change the whole idea of cinematography. They change what matters to the viewer. You know, this movie set the tone for movies for the next like 10 years. You know, movies like in the 90s, like the Titanic, that changed everything. The Rock changed a lot of things. Jurassic Park changed a lot of things. You know, Catch Me If You Can changed things on certain ways of doing movies. Gladiator changed things. Like, this movie is one of those movies that just changes how people want to see a movie. And I just love this movie. I could watch it all the time. I'm always like, man, Bruce Willis' feet have to hurt so bad because he's walking on glass with no shoes. Just, that would suck. And I just always love this movie. Definitely number 2.
That's definitely classic Bruce Willis, too.
Classic.
You don't get movies like, they don't feel like Die Hard movies anymore.
No, movies are just too much CGI and too much trying to be so ahead of its time. That movie was perfect. It was just everything it could have been. Loved it. What's your number 2?
So my number 2 would have to be
classic.
Jaws.
Jaws
1975, directed by Steven Spielberg. I remember when I first saw this, I was probably maybe 6 or 7 years old. But to be honest, I wasn't scared. I never really
terrified.
scared me. It never really scared me as a kid. I was always
scared.
so fascinated with sharks, and I've always loved sharks as a kid. And this movie I just loved watching it whenever they would show the shark. And you didn't even see the shark till about halfway through the movie.
That was good.
They finally showed it.
I was fine with that.
And another thing is that I grew up with my dad. My dad's a big fisherman, and Robert Shaw, who played Quint, the shark fisherman, always reminds me of my dad, doesn't he? Just like his personality and just the way he is.
Doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, it just reminds me a lot of my dad.
Afraid of nothing. Fearless.
And this movie, I would think, is ahead of its time for sure.
Way ahead of its time. For 70s. And that's a young Richard Dreyfuss, too.
Richard Dreyfuss.
He was great in this. Roy Scheider, who recently passed away too.
Yeah.
He's the main character.
Mm-hmm.
Such a good movie. The very beginning freaks me out when the guy and the girl are out there swimming, and she's like
Yeah.
like she like disappears. I love how she like disappears in the water.
You don't know what the shark
I'm like,
looks
what the hell's this? I was like so scared. It's like PG. How's this rated PG?
Yeah, it's
Terrifying.
very violent for PG.
Very
too.
violent. But
Very,
back
very
then,
violent.
a lot of movies were PG. It wasn't like PG-13 yet. It was like PG or rated R.
PG or R.
Yeah. So probably, and I would say this. I think Stegs. I think you would agree. If this movie came out now, it would have to be at least PG-13. At least PG-13.
But the thing is, like, it was so good, and there was no CGI in this either.
I know. It was
and
just...
like the animatronic shark, even though it didn't work half the time that they were talking about, but it was so good and so believable.
I was scared to death of it. I was scared to death of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what a great name, Jaws. How did they get the name Jaws? I have no idea. I don't even know.
You know, I never really...
I don't know. It's a great name. It's a great name. I'm sure Jaw the Mountain, who knows. I wasn't going to do this, but I could not pick my top number one. So I'm just going to show you in a twosome, in a duo here, my number ones. Hands down, Karate Kid. Grew up watching it. I've seen this movie a million times. Good Will Hunting is like my serious movie. I love everything about both movies. I got to meet a lot of the guys from the Karate Kid in real life, like 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and it was all the Cobra Kai guys, and they were really cool in real life, very cool. Like Johnny Lawrence and John Kreese, like all those bad guys, they were great. They're super nice. And Good Will Hunting, I just love that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck actually wrote this story of Good Will Hunting while they were in college together. Like that actually happened. Like that's so cool, and they got the star in it, which is just crazy. It's like how Rocky was. Sylvester Stallone wrote the story and got the star in it, and it's just so cool. It just gets to show your prowess for writing to turn into a screenplay, to turn into acting. Just very awesome. I've never been a big Minnie Driver fan, but she did a nice job in this movie. I liked her a lot. But the person I think matters the most is Rob Williams. He plays a teacher, but he's also kind of like a psychiatrist. And he's had great loss in his life, and he just understands Will, who's Matt Damon, his faults, and how he's a genius, but he has a lot of personal issues, mainly with family, and along the lines that Rob Williams had. So I just love this movie. It's very touching. Probably one of the best scenes in any movie I've ever seen in my life, and I've seen a ton of movies, is the scene where Rob Williams, and Matt Damon are talking on the park bench. And they're talking about love, and they're talking about Robin Williams' deceased wife, and how he just loved her. Well, that scene, that screenplay, just his script must have been like 3 pages long. He talks for like 11 minutes nonstop, and the scene's beautiful. It always makes me stop whatever I'm doing. I just have to watch just for that scene. But love that movie. But Karate Kid, Go Will Hunting, my number ones. I couldn't pick a number one. Couldn't do it. I love them both too much. Stegs, your number one?
My number one of all
Last
time,
but not least,
has to be Jurassic Park.
So scary.
1993. I didn't see this in the theaters, but I remember the first time I watched this, the lady that used to babysit me, she put it on for her kids and I. And this is the movie that, I remember when I first saw it, the beginning scene with the raptor in the beginning where, the raptor kills the guy on top of the cage.
Yeah.
Pulls him in and eats him like that. That always terrified me. I'm like, I wonder what that raptor looks like. 'Cause you never see
Probably
it.
horrifying.
You don't see it in the beginning. But this is what pretty much started my dinosaur craze as a kid. As soon as I saw this movie, I was hooked. And I remember that Christmas, my parents got me all the action figures and the toys. And, I had like my own dinosaur zoo. Like in my playroom, I just had so many Jurassic Park toys and figures, and I loved it so much.
The Raptors are my favorite. I love that. They're just so little badasses. Even though T-Rex takes care of them at the end.
T-Rex is cool, but
T-Rex is cool.
The Raptors. Ever since I saw this movie, the Raptors became my favorite dinosaur.
Yeah.
Even though they're not accurate to what real raptors really look like, they still did a very good job of of making them raptors so terrifying.
And they were so quick.
They were very quick.
Little guys. They look like little T-Rexes almost. They're just so little, but they're so just evil.
So vicious, and they'll rip you apart like crazy.
Yeah.
Another thing that now that this is my favorite movie and I've seen it so many times, I've noticed that like when this came out, the actors in it weren't really that popular at the time. Like they weren't like big name actors.
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, Jeff Goldblum.
Newman from Seinfeld.
I love that part with what's his name? What's that guy's name? Newman. What's his name?
I forget his name, real name.
Wayne Knight.
Wayne Knight.
Oh, he was actually really good in that part. Dennis Nedry.
He was good.
I did love
Jeff
Dennis
Goldblum.
Nedry.
My favorite part in the movie that's not dealing with action or dinosaurs is when Jeff Goldblum sees the rhinoceros's shit and he goes, "That's a big pile of shit." Triceratops. He goes, "That's a big pile of shit." That was just so simple, but it was just genius though at the same time because like you're in a land of dinosaurs and you look at the shit and you're like, "That's a big pile of shit." Mm-hmm. Love that.
Yep.
What a classic.
And now that this is in this and Jaws are both in my top 10. I've always had a love for Steven Spielberg. I think Steven Spielberg's such a brilliant director. Just think of all the movies that and there's so many different genres of movies he's made. That's always it had an impact on my life. Like Jaws and Jurassic Park are my number 2, my 1 and 2. And then how he made the Indiana Jones movies. A lot of people love them. He collaborated with George Lucas with them. And then he also made Catch Me If You Can, which is my favorite Steven Spielberg movie from the 2000s.
Love mine too.
Thought that was great. Tom Hanks, another great character. He played Cal Hanratty. Mm-hmm. He's awesome. Steven Spielberg will always go down as my favorite director.
Yeah.
Of all time.
So good. Well, folks, that's all we got for tonight. I hope you enjoyed our top 10 favorite movies. We collectively try to get it all together. There's a lot that I would have loved to have in my list from Stegs, and I'm sure vice versa. But until next time, you take it easy and K-bye.